enemy. Hazrat Masih Maud again challenged the opponents after Allah spoke to him on this issue. It is not that he inferred from the verse of the Holy Quran that he should also go for mubahala, and through that inference he adopted a certain course. It was only when Allah directly spoke to him, telling him to throw this challenge of mubahala to his opponents, that he adopted this course. So my inference from both these situations is that unless Allah permits you to do that, even if you are true, you are not entitled to throw this challenge. Because if you do that, then you take the decrees of Allah into your own hands. Sometimes Allah wants to give more, extend rope to the criminals according to his own designs and wider plans. And if you throw the challenge suddenly, you interfere with the decree of Allah in both directions. It is possible sometimes that according to Allah's decree, a pious man's death is nigh at hand and he doesn't know it. And it is possible, of course, again, that a criminal's death is far, far away from the death of a pious and true man. And if such a person throws the challenge of mubahala to that criminal, would Allah be forced to change his decree and reverse it? Give longer life to the person about whom he had decided he should come to me earlier, and kill the person who he had decreed to live longer. So if that is acceptable, then every Tom and Dick and Harry can interfere with the decrees of Allah and start enlarging his lifespan by throwing a mubahala to anybody. All this is untenable. So sometimes people who write to me, throw the challenge of mubahala to non-Ahmadis in this. I just ignore this, because I know unless Allah entitles you particularly to throw the challenge of mubahala, you are not entitled and you will not be given any aid by Allah. And people have done it before and sometimes do it with mistake now, and nothing comes out of it, because Allah has not decided. This is the situation which we find. And when Allah decides and permits, then Allah sees to it that the person whom He has permitted is not brought to disgrace because of this decision about one's life. This is exactly what happened at the time of Hazrat Masih Maud, when under this general permission, he also challenged Maulvi Sana'ullah Sahib. And he said, come to mubahala, accept mubahala with me, and then you will see that you die and meet a disgraceful end in my presence. And if I am a false person, I will meet a disgraceful end in your presence. Now, because Allah had guaranteed the honesty and name and honor of Hazrat Masih Maud, and he was doing it on the authority of Allah Himself, so Allah managed it in the most wonderful manner that challenge of mubahala was accepted by first rejected totally by Maulvi Sana'ullah Sahib, and then accepted in a way that it turned the tables against him. He wrote in response that I believe that you are a false person, but I do not accept your claim that a false person must die in the lifetime of a true person. History tells us otherwise. We know that Musaylama Kazzab was given a longer lifespan than Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, while he was a false claimant and Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam was true claimant. So my facts are these, and I don't accept your claim that a false person must die within the lifespan of a true person. And this is what he wrote, and this is exactly what happened to him. It was all done under Allah's guidance, and Allah compelled him to write these lines because Allah had given authority to Hazrat Masih Maud, and if he had not committed himself to this line of action, Hazrat Masih Maud would have been disgraced. So this Mubahala of Maulana Sana'ullah is in fact a great shining miracle in this, on the side of Ahmadiyyat rather than an objectionable point in the hands of the opponents of Ahmadiyyat. But the principle again is the same. Mubahala can only be gone into if Allah himself permits someone or instructs someone to throw this challenge to his opponents in his behalf, in his name. Otherwise, it's just a game of chance. It may happen this way and may happen that way.
This question, I believe, has been put forward by a lady from Guyana. And she says that...
Is she here, present among the ladies, or just...
It's a letter from Guyana.
Quite fine.
She says that I have been fortunate to listen to a tape at the Mission House, Guyana, which was recorded at the London Mosque on the 16th and 17th of July 1984 in answering a question by a woman. Question: the Holy Quran permits a man to chastise his wife to the extent of even beating her. Is there any such permission for a wife towards a delinquent husband? That was the question.
Yes.
As I understand, your answer explained only the rights of a man to admonish his wife. But there seems to be no right for a wife to admonish a delinquent husband. With greatest respect and humility.
Yes, I understand the point now, please. The fact is that she perhaps couldn't understand my answer fully, or perhaps, in fact, I was not able to explain myself fully, but I still think I answered this part of the question there during the discussion. What I said was that if you permit a weak person to beat a powerful person, it would be a very stupid permission. Because in fact, what you will be bringing about the annihilation of the weak person by this permission. So because generally speaking, most often than not, the male members are stronger than the female members of this union. It would be very, very wrong on the part of Allah to permit women to chastise their husbands if they find themselves to be rebellious and wrong or this and that. So Allah is a wise being. Allah is not just in the American terminology, that the ladies have equal rights with men. So your laws and regulations should accept this in principle and start issuing further orders in view of this claim. You can't. To claim that both are equal is a different thing. But the realities, the facts of life will not change or mold according to their claims. The fact is that although they claim that both are equal, no one in America has invented so far a method whereby they could bear children in turn, the husband and wife. 1 year a husband should bear a children, then the other year a wife should bear a children. So Allah has made them differently. One sex is fairer and is highly appreciated for that charm of being fair and weak and fragile. In the other sense, other sexes, generally speaking, sometimes it is reversed individually, but there are exceptions. Otherwise, it's a commonly known fact. How could the women expect Allah to order them to raise their hands against their power?